and I can see out of the corner of my eye on a television screen, live Friday morning. Welcome to Property Buzz, and we may need to keep today a little bit tight because I need to be down in town in about 45 minutes, 1 hour, to host a cocktail reception for the REB Top 100 agents. Stepping in to cover that. That's alongside the partner of the REB Top 100 agents, CBA. They've got a whole bunch of the nation's best real estate agents in a room, and no doubt there'll be a little bit of fanfare. It's Friday afternoon, and the starter pistol will go off at about 12 p.m., which gives me agency to have a glass of champagne and have a chat with some of the best agents in the nation as we formally acknowledge the top 100 agents for 2026. If you're not familiar with this, it's an initiative of REB, led by my colleague Liam Garman, who is here joining me in the studio. Liam, good to see you, mate.
Phil. Yeah, good to see you too. I had to move my laptop because everyone could see my screen when you were talking.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, that's
well,
bad.
I mean, like,
what's on there?
Emails.
Yes.
What do we call it? PPI, personal private information? No, nothing like that. Just
No, you don't
a
want
lot of
personal.
stories about what we're going to be talking about today.
Things and stuff. So we've got to keep it tight because I need to put a suit on. Yes, I will be putting a suit on.
So I'll give us a quick rundown of our things and stuff that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be doing a shameless plug for our WhatsApp community because you and I were musing last week. Because we're getting a lot of inbound discussion from our listeners. Yeah. Hey, why don't we start a WhatsApp community? So we've got that. We'll work out how to share that with everyone. Listing numbers, inflation numbers, and collapse of some builders.
Yes, let's start with the builder collapse.
Yeah.
What was it, 3.1,
3.2 billion? Or was it 3.6? Gosh, I mean, the Battler Group, I think it's a silent age of Battler. I mean, that was the slowest moving train wreck I've ever seen. I mean, that comes as no surprise. Essentially, this group was they've been in the doldrums for a while as a result of work which required rework, and the financial stress that put on the company, having to send trades out to fix up dodgy old work. And what that meant was, at the end of the day, they couldn't fix it, and you have regular Aussies that were owed hundreds of millions of dollars by this company for defective works, and then the amount of money they owed to creditors became too high. So Bob's your auntie.
There's about 15,000 homes in the pipeline that are currently getting built, or are supposed to be getting built, that won't be getting built.
Yep.
Yeah. I've seen a fair bit of commentary around this, and for some reason, it's like a big thing at the moment about companies under stress and insolvencies, and I get out and about a fair bit, and I know a lot of people are doing it tough. Like, I think there's this facade at the moment in relation to the business community in Australia that the government will tell you that everything is bullish and everything's moving the right way, but I think look under the cover, and there is a lot of stress and a lot of strain. I don't know anyone I speak to who say, yeah, it's a really good time at the moment. Every single person I speak to say it's bloody hard and it's tough, and I know people are laying off people left, right and centre. I know people are downsizing, irrespective of where you work in the economy. It's happening all over the place, and that's really running in parallel with the advent of AI. But I think a lot of businesses are preparing for what is going to be very tough times ahead, and there's already talking about New South Wales going into recession. Yeah, it's going to be a property-led recession, and you only need to think about it. And I was chatting with someone the other day in New South Wales, for example. Their three main sources of revenue are all under threat. You've got, on one hand, volumes of sales are dropping, which is housing market led, which means that there's less stamp duty going into the government coffers. That's a big issue. You've got then payroll tax. Payroll tax is a state-based tax. If businesses aren't doing well and businesses aren't hiring, if businesses are firing, inherently what happens is that you're going to get smaller. And by the way, governments don't pay payroll tax, right? So it's private businesses that pay it. And if there is less of those businesses around and or they're smaller, that means there's going to be less tax coffers coming in. And then also, depends whether or not you're a cynic or a conspiracy theorist, property values are decreasing. So what happens then is that the valuer general needs to be making assessments against the price of properties, and that would mean the value of land will be decreasing, and therefore land tax will be decreasing. So these are all property related issues, and if people are developing less, and then there's less development applications, et cetera, et cetera. So we will be thrust into a property-led recession, and it will be nationwide. And you see it now. That there is just one of many examples. Already we're not able to keep up with the needs of the housing construction as it is right now. And I think someone came out last week, HIA or one of the other bodies, saying we're probably 50 or 60,000 off what we need to be building. I think the target's 120. It's really about 190 or something or other, right? So watch this space. Yeah. Watch this space. But there's a lot of stress and pressure out there, and we now learn that most of the banks now, and including Goldman Sachs, which is in the major bank, it's a different sort of organisation, are now predicting interest rate hikes.
I'm conscious to not necessarily put this in the same bag as people that are doing it genuinely hard, like genuinely hard. And I walk up and down my local high street, and you do see businesses, it's empty, it's a ghost town. And then a few months later, the shop's for lease, and it's heartbreaking. That is obviously Australians having a crack that are being hard done by. Look, there is a lot of public commentary going around about Battler property and some of the claims of people that have been making claims against the property group. So I want to be fair, because a lot of people have been really hard done by this group. They've lost a lot of money because of building defects, even proven by the administrative tribunal as well, and a lot of people that were making claims against the group as well. So it raises a question that the Battler was a group which prided itself on cheapies. It was to do a cheap job.
Like affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
So they're making affordable housing, or the housing was affordable.
Notionally it was meant to be cheap, right? Okay. But with falling house prices, we fall into a very interesting point, which is you've got established homes that are below replacement cost. Yeah. Right. Now I look through, and one of my favourite things to do is look through the Melbourne market, especially when we discuss housing in Australia. But you and I spoke about this last week. I was looking through Toorak, which is the equivalent of like a Bellevue Hill or a Vaucluse, a Mossman down in Melbourne, and you're still getting townhouses there for 1.1. I looked at it yesterday for sold. You can have a crack. When you look at areas like that, where you do have an average income which is extremely high, you do have the ability to get townhouses of over 100 square meters with a courtyard. You have to ask the question of what it means for replacement cost, because when you do have the ability to get on the ladder, buy in an area where people want to live in, have a home where you and your family could live in for 5-10 years and be remarkably happy, does it make sense that the replacement cost for a lot of new builds is over $1 million? Yeah. No. Now, that's not to say that builders can do it cheaper. We already know that about 50% of it comes down to, or 50% of the cost of a new build comes down to tax. We already know that. Yeah. We already know that it's only going up. Following the invasion of the attacks on Iran earlier in the year, where everyone was talking about the price of PVC piping going up 40%. Such a small thing that we don't really think of, but plastic products, obviously relying on petroleum, exploded in price. Yeah. So we also have to ask the question, with costs going up for new builds, are regular Aussies even going to be able to afford it? Which is exactly what we spoke about last week. Areas in outer metro areas which were historically made for affordable housing for Aussies to get on the ladder, now with new builds in those areas being over $1.5 million, well, that's not really first rung on the ladder for a regular working class Aussie. Just some colour that I thought I'd add, because
this is the point, right? The land. The land isn't necessarily the expensive bit, right? If you're developing new greenfields developments, right? Like, you got to sort of put sewerage and roads and all that sort of stuff in, right? But when sort of up to 50% of a new build is government and regulatory taxes and other costs, that's a significant amount of money, plus the land, plus the building. The story I saw come out this week was Melbourne's median value. I think it's Cotality data. Melbourne's median value is 1.6% lower than what it was 5 years ago. So if you think about the inflation through that period, the cost of living increases through that period, property prices are still lower than what they were back then. So you don't have to be a genius to work out the math. There's something wrong with the math somewhere. There's something inherently wrong with the math somewhere. And this slump in Melbourne, depending who you speak to, it's going to remain like that for some period of time. So you go, okay, great. Well, if it's cheaper now to buy than what it was 5 years ago, why aren't more people buying in Melbourne? Where are all these first homeowners that the government's told us we're going to have a fairer crack of property? And we spoke about this fairness concept last week. And this language and this rhetoric is still being used daily by the government, whether it's in the chamber or it's out and about and all the media are doing. We're giving a fairer crack for Australians, fairer crack for Australians, fairer crack for Australians. They haven't yet actually defined what fairer is. And everyone is still in the dark, and people don't actually understand this concept of fairness, and I don't get where they're going with it. I don't think it's a narrative and a story that should be sold by the government around fairness. They should be ensuring that everyone has the ability to be the best they possibly can be.
I think it's probably...
That's what fairness is. It's not meaning everyone is exactly the same.
I think it's probably taking the government by surprise, which is why they need to double down on the fairness argument. The reaction of the market, I think, has taken the government by surprise. The fact that it's gone down so fast, so quick. Now, this isn't to say... And I really want to be precise with my language here, because I'm not one of those doom and gloom people that you read the Daily Mail and you see a headline about property prices are going to drop, blah, blah. Yeah, it probably is. But I'm not a doom and gloom person, because as a result, it's, in my opinion, primarily people waiting on the sidelines and hesitating and delaying purchasing decisions, rather there being something structurally or fundamentally wrong with the Australian property market or economy writ large. So some of the listing numbers that we've seen to date, spring selling cooler than usual. So I think this was from REA or CoStar, one of the big listing platforms. New listings running 8.2% below the 5-year average and 2% below last year. So what does that mean? It means that the number of people actually putting their properties up for sale is actually lower. Now, this is this data. Now, this isn't necessarily consistent with all data. There is some data out there saying that listings are higher. But what this does indicate is that there isn't necessarily some major financial economic headwinds that are forcing people to sell. People are actually very happy to sit on the side. In fact, 8.2% lower than the 5-year average of people looking to sell. People aren't being forced to sell. A lot of people are waiting on the sidelines. So I do want to highlight that in so much as it's not that the property market is crumbling around us. And that is one very big thing that people should have in the back of their minds.
So what's all this mean? Well, not a lot. I must admit, I'm getting a bit fatigued talking about property prices and speaking. And again, I get peppered on my social media with just everyone with a voice and opinion of it. And people go to me, I feel, are you worried that the property prices are going down? I go, it doesn't really bother me. There's no real consequence or recourse to me. And you speak to most property investors and they would say the other thing. That's based on their current portfolio. Yeah, they just go, okay, well, yeah. We know that property doesn't go up, in a straight line in value. It bounces around, and this was certainly one of those points of times it bounced around. Do I still believe in real estate as an asset class for the long term? Yes, I do. Is the immediacy of whether or not it's going to be a flurry of capital growth wins in the next couple of years? No, probably not. But you know what? I bought good assets, and I look at the P&L of my portfolio, every other day, and I go, yeah, not much to do here. I'm reviewing my rents every single month. Every single year.
Every month, gosh.
Yeah. Every single year when they come up. One other thing that most property investors need to be considerate of is that you got to do the dance with your property manager. Your property manager going, I think we should increase it by $10 a week or $20 a week. You go back going, but everyone else is increasing it by $50 a week. Didn't I just read that NAB said rent's going to increase by 30%, so raise it to 30%, right? So it's all going to be contingent to the market. You've spoken about rents coming down in some areas and areas that you operate within. So that's not a blanket approach. And every person in the world now, in Australia, is a property market expert and commentator. So I'm a bit over it. I'm a bit fatigued with it. And I sit here and go, how do we actually have constructive conversations on property buzz? What's the buzz around property? That's what we're paid to do, is talk about that. And we just don't want to be the peddlers of headlines and being anti-government or pro-government or having a crack at people. But the base position of all of this is we're not building enough houses to satisfy the current trajectory of the Australian economy and the Australian population and everything that involves in that. So what do we do about it? Well, we've got a year and a half, 2 years until we come to the next federal election. Every Australian's got to have an opportunity to vote. I think what's got to happen between now and then is that you're going to the cracks have certainly started to appear, and those cracks are going to widen and widen and widen. And when the government actually has a realisation that maybe things aren't as good as what they should be, they're going to have to scramble to try and remedy that part. The remedy is going to take time. And a lot of it is confidence driven. You suck, they've already sucked $1 trillion. Think about this conceptually. You again look at the headlines. They've already sucked $1 trillion out of the value of residential real estate in Australia since budget. People go, well, is it really that much? It's like it's not an issue. You never. That was a price in time. What the collective value of Australian real estate is. Well, if you're not selling or buying, it doesn't matter. And it's true. But you suck at the perception of wealth of Australians, and they're going to really change their habits and behaviours. Goes back to your point, means they're going to be spending less.
Yeah, which has the flow-on effect. We're going to have to at some point rip billions of dollars of spending out of the economy.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. It's hard. It's easier to grow than what it is to shrink. It's hard to shrink. Shrinking costs money. Shrinking takes time. And it's a very difficult thing to do because not only you've got to balance the P&L, but you also got to balance perceptions. Who actually wants, and Australia, we've had this great sort of post-war journey, who actually wants to live in a nation that's going backwards and is satisfied with this notion of going backwards, when a lot of people will actually believe there is no reason for us to be going backwards. With better economic management, irrespective of the circumstances that Australia faces, we should still be advancing. And a lot of it comes down to government spending, and a lot of it comes down to government decision-making. So what do we do about that? I don't know. However, we can't do much at all. We just got to sit there and put a smile on our dial, get taxed more by the government. Any chance they get to take more, they'll take more because they need it in order to satisfy their spending. And we're just going to have to put a smile on our dial and just wait and just wait. It's like a train wreck waiting to happen, and everyone's sitting around waiting for it. At the moment, it's going slowly. It'll speed up in time, and then it's just going to speed up very, very fast. And I hate to think where we're going to end up. But anyway.
Well, we hate to see where we end up. Stubborn inflation drives CBA to follow ANZ in predicting November hike. That was from CanStar today.
Yep.
So two of Australia's largest banks.
So there's going to be a rate hike just before Christmas. So all your retailers are going to be sitting there going, oh, thanks for that. That's not good. That's really going to curb spending. Look, why are interest rates going up? It's because inflation is still above the target band. Why is inflation above the target band? When does CPI data come out? This week?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. We did have CPI data come out this week.
CPI data.
Yeah.
So what were the drivers of CBA? Oh, sorry, CPI.
What were the
increase?
drivers?
Yeah, is it rents? Is it headline? Is it because you sit there and most people just go, I don't understand it. What's going on? Is it the cost of groceries,
clothing, alcohol and tobacco, tax driven?
Yeah.
Housing.
Yeah.
But I mean,
mate, people smoke more lungies and drink more plonk when things aren't good, right?
Yeah. So, but the housing thing's quite ironic, right? Because you see that house prices are going backwards, but the housing growth is higher, 5%.
The cost of housing.
The cost of housing. Well, housing is a sum of everything to do with it. So that's my understanding is it's also your internal home. So that's where you would have things like energy prices, water prices. That comes under housing. So it's not literally just rents and mortgages. It's everything to do in terms of living. Yeah. So that's the biggest driver. Housing, alcohol and clothing. And education, 4.7%. So I don't know.
Increase in education.
I don't know really how that works. That could be a case of interest on HECS debt's growing because the interest rate's higher and the inflation rate's higher. Probably. So
even though they took a quarter of everyone's HECS debt out.
Still. There was 1 year where I remember where they indexed it to inflation. What was that, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And they grew it by like 5-6% every year. I saw it. I was like, what the hell?
Government working, trying to get young people ahead, Liam. Just tax them more.
Yeah.
Tax them more. One thing, though, which I'd like someone to explain to me, and again, I'm not a particularly intelligent person. I could sort of work it out eventually, usually, in time once I speak to enough people. But I'd really like someone to explain to me how and why the government could intervene really, really quickly to starve off the economic collapse of potentially a aluminium smelter in the Hunter Valley by a huge injection of government money to try and save those jobs.
$1 million per job.
Yeah, save those jobs and therefore a sovereign manufacturing capability, which is aluminium, which we need for stuff, right? So the government happily rock up there and in a Labor heartland and buy all those votes. But then you've got 15,000 people. Like, from what I understand, the original ambitions around all these budget changes was to help 7,500 first home buyers, right, over 10 years. Was that what it was? So there's 15,000 homes there that are going to be jeopardised because of the collapse of this building company. Why isn't the government jumping in with a huge parachute saying, we'll save you, like Aussie John used to
you
do?
don't want to. Like, I mean, this company needs to be out of the market.
I know, but what's going to happen with all those 15,000 homes that everyone's expecting to help and support?
Are you suggesting we should have a national builder? Could be good.
I don't know.
I mean,
but
I remember
you can't have anything nationalised in this country because it gets rorted.
It does get rorted.
You think about what we've had. We had a bank which was nationalised, the Commonwealth Bank. Now it's a public company. Telstra has nationalised telecommunications, which was privatised. More Australians hold shares.
Better?
Well,
is
more
Telstra
Australians
doing
hold shares
better now
than
that
anything
it's been
else.
privatised? Or
I believe it is. It's actually turning a profit, right? They had bumper profits, even though I think the share price sort of come off a bit
off the back of a few issues.
Yeah, so we know that governments aren't very good at doing these type of things, right?
Yeah.
So who's coming in? Who's going to come in and
But
go?
clearly,
we'll fix all this up?
clearly, if you're looking at building, nor is the private sector.
I know, but the point is that if the
I would make an argument.
Yeah.
I would make an argument because I was talking to and people who listen to this probably worked out my political opinions, and maybe the fact that I threw the spanner in the works talking about nationalisation of certain industries would come as a surprise to a lot of our listeners. It'll probably come as a surprise because, Liam, I wouldn't have expected you to say that. I was talking to a progressive friend of mine. That works for the government years ago, and he actually raised a very good point, which was the several years ago the privatisation of inspectors for new builds. So large new build buildings used to have a public sector employee that did it, and there would be all these oversights to make sure that they weren't basically on the take and stuff. And then the government licensed it and made it private inspections. And then you have a lot of people that are now a little bit concerned that, hey, if I don't certify this building, then I ain't going to be called back for work. So it is a perverse economic or financial incentive for them to approve everything through to continue getting work.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Well,
maybe government certifies for large scale bodies like this is the right thing to do.
Maybe. Like, this is what you expect from government, some leadership.
And that's something as small as that, I think, is a very middle of the road centrist answer. Like, it doesn't have to be for every building a pest. Obviously, you could have a good building a pest. I'm not going to that level. Because if you're, John Smith from Campbelltown, you're doing all the building a pest, you're probably not going to be on the take because you're just going and you've got a website and people come to you and you do the building a pest. You're probably going to be quite upfront with that. But for large buildings, for large towers, large estates, perhaps having a private certifier public certifier.
Everything, and we're seeing it play out now in Sydney, but it's sort of quite expansive. The layers and levels of corruption, and whatever your version of corruption is, right? There's different versions of corruptions. Where there's a lot of money floating around, you get some nefarious carrier trying to fucking manipulate the system, right? That's the way the world works. So they're attracted to these areas where there might not be sufficient oversight or it's easy to rot NDIS, for example. Now you look at what should be nationalised, what should not be privatised in a Western country, what should be nationalised, right? Let's talk about this. Defence, we used to have a federated military here, and under the realms of federation in 1901, we had a central military, right? I think the military should be a national objective. then you look at what else should be nationalised, right? Government is nationalised because of the very nature of government. But you sit there and think, where is the government actually better at doing stuff than what the private sector is? Now, this is a philosophical economic argument, right? You can't privatise the tax collection. That's a national imperative.
Where are they better? I think in a lot of places.
Like where?
Telehealth. Get a nurse within seconds.
Yeah.
Looking for
Nationalised, or is that state-based?
Well, it's
Department
public.
of Health.
I don't know whether
Yeah,
it's
public.
state or federal,
Yeah.
but it's public.
Yeah.
You get fantastic people within minutes. And that's something that we should be grateful for as Australians.
Yes.
You talk about things like Telstra. I mean, the only times I've ever called up and complained, you get punted to a call centre overseas, and you never get a problem fixed.
Yeah.
I've had great dealings with a lot of state bodies when it comes to driver's licenses, this, that. You call up, at least you get someone here that's sympathetic and empathetic with your point of view, which is as a result of not having a profit or financial incentive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think that there are a lot of places where the government does a better job.
but funded by the Australian taxpayer, right? So the
Exactly.
point being is that should...
But I mean, as opposed to
should-
your Telstra bill funding Telstra not helping you.
So the point is that if real estate is the most critical of critical infrastructure, it's all outsourced to individuals.
Yep.
And was it 93 or 96% of all investment property in Australia is owned by individuals, right? So this would be an argument to say, well, this is why the super funds are all sniffing around build to rent.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, with super being one of the great sovereign assets for the Australian government, right? Like, you're just going to see changes and shifts, but you know, you can't champion private enterprise when it's so still restrictively inhibited by government bureaucracy and red tape, and that's the solution, and that's what needs to be. That's
Well,
what needs to be solved.
Yeah, I think you could definitely reduce tax in terms of the 50% building, but I think in red tape, in terms of quality, I think you need more red tape in terms of quality.
Well, maybe, you know. But then again, you see, you know, in the paper today, they're talking about bringing a whole bunch of, maybe it was in Queensland, I can't remember which state it was, Queensland. You know, this idea of saying, hey, we need so much more skilled trades labour. Let's bring in skilled tradespeople from you know, international elements, and the unions are up in arms straight away saying, no, you're going to wreck everything because it's a quality issue, it's a skill issue.
Yeah, right.
But is it a protective issue saying, well, we want to protect the wages, right?
Yeah.
This is the trucking industry in Australia. They reckon his wages are dropping and dropping and dropping because they'll just find anyone, you know, migrants will come in and just go, yeah, I'll do $1 cheaper an hour.
Yeah, but
or $2
unfortunately,
an
you
hour.
actually do need quality though.
But
on the union side with
but this is the point. But they're going, that's fine. But and I'm not having an opinion on this. It's just what was said that migrant truckers, and we're talking about migrants from Southeast Asia, the quality of their driving and their experience in driving on westernised roads is probably subpar to the quality of Western drivers on Western roads. And they're saying they drive as though they're driving still trucks in the third world. Therefore, the quality slips.
Let the
and
insurers,
therefore there's more danger.
Let the insurers have a say over it. And it's true because in terms of how long, and this is purely an argument of certification, right?
Yeah, this is a certification.
This is certification. I think it was Australian Welders came out 1 or 2 weeks ago saying we will no longer certify people that haven't done their training in Australia.
They won't certify the weld. Or
the welder.
Yeah.
If you've got overseas qualifications, because your qualifications are so bad and so subpar relative to the work that we expect, we will now no longer recognise a number of overseas qualifications.
And that's okay. It just means stuff's more expensive.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's all it is.
And okay, so to your point, I think it's reasonable. Like, it's a discussion that we need to have as a nation.
Yeah.
Right. It's a discussion that we need to have as a nation, and this is what we were talking about last week with Uber. I suppose it pains me because we always go down to this the very reductive argument of when we discuss migrant workers, we oversimplify the argument to say, you know, we need it because things need to be cheaper.
Yeah.
But that therein lies part of the problem, I think, with today's economy. You know, you can jump in an Uber and you could go to a restaurant and you could have a nice night out, probably in terms of your average annual or weekly take-home pay, probably cheaper than it was 30 years ago. You know, I can jump in an Uber comparatively.
Yeah.
You know, and this is one of the things. You know, when you have like a bit of a Boomer versus Gen Z argument, and Boomers like, well, you spend too much going out. I would argue that jumping in a $10 Uber, going somewhere, getting a very cheap meal, having a date night, for example, probably less harmful to the back pocket now than it was 30 years ago, where you'd have to get a cabbie, cash, this, that, the other. It was more special. Now, the reason I'm going with this is, yeah, you are getting things cheaper, but is the Australian economy really more productive for it?
Probably, it's the productivity issue,
It's the
right?
productivity issue. Probably not. Are we benefiting as a nation because we have a lot of people that are now working for essentially under minimum wage? What are we getting for it? Okay, we get cheap Uber Eats. Is that the trade-off we're looking for as a nation? Okay, our builds are slightly cheaper. It's 10, 15% cheaper than if you had a well-certified and well-trained domestic workforce. Yeah. Oh, but, you know, it falls apart after 10 years. Is that really better?
And no one really talks about this, but this is utility versus productivity. Let's talk about Uber Eats for a moment, right? And exactly what you're talking about. I've never ever used a food order app. Never done it. So I went yesterday and I bought fish and chips for the family. Right?
Kirribilli fish and chips.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, nice. Good spot.
And we had this discussion with the family when I got home.
Yeah.
They always complain about me always talking about money, right? And I went, guess how much all this costs, right? I got 2 salmon and chips, 2 flathead and chips, a burger and chips. Amateur hour. Do you want me to read it? I could probably just read it.
Yeah, look, we can start again and read it. Let's do that.
The other people who are tuning into it aren't going to know. Start it again.
Doing my masters at
Oh,
the
there we
same
go.
time.
Here we go.
Now
It's
start
business.
again.
Oh,
It's very thin. And now we've lost
Can't
it.
hear
again.
it.
Mortgages.
Jessica, you're saving to buy your own home. What's that process been like for you?
It's been really challenging. The amount of deposit that I will need keeps moving, like the goalposts keep shifting. So I've been working and I'm doing my masters at the same time. It's been a big hustle and I don't think I'm anywhere near affording home.
You've been renting for the last 17 years. Have you ever calculated how much has gone into rent?
It is $175,000 that I've spent on other people's mortgages.
You're 34, you're studying art therapy. Did you expect to own a home by this stage of your life?
My grandparents and my parents, both with blue-collar jobs and minimal savings, bought a house and raised 3 kids. It was never a consideration when I was going through school that I would be in the position position where I am now, where I'm still renting, the narrative was always you go to university, get a good job. And my parents and my grandparents really wanted me to go to university because they didn't take that opportunity when they were younger. I thought that having a university degree would have helped me get a better job by now. I originally wanted to be a bricklayer, which is pretty funny to think about, a 4'11" bricklayer. And my teachers encouraged me to go to university. They didn't want me to waste academic success. I don't regret my time at university. It's just that I don't think realistically that is the way to build wealth. I wish I had got a job in construction and started building wealth that way. It is 100.
See, I like this video because it was a bit of an arc. You know, it was a bit of an arc in terms of when I started watching it and I started listening and talking about like both my parents and grandparents were in blue collar jobs and I'm studying a master's in art therapy. Why can't I get ahead? And I'm like, well, therein lies the answer, right? Because you're doing a master's in art therapy. I've got a master's degree, probably cost me $50,000 to do. Have I seen any benefit from it?
Zero.
None.
Look at you.
Don't do it. Just what a way. Unless you're, I don't know.
Look what's happened.
I know, look, disheveled. But unless you're, I don't know, bloody a doctor or something, unless it's really going to supercharge your career, there's no point. There's no point, right? And therein lies the issue. And when she started talking about, you know, when she was at school and everyone encouraging people to go to university, this is what you and I always talk about. Something structurally wrong with the country that you go to university, therefore you're better. You know, people look at their kids, don't go into the trades, go to university because, you don't want to waste your academic success. Mate, I've got plenty of mates that have been tradies and they've gone back to university in their mid-20s. And because they took time, they made money, they got a trade, and they wanted to do something on the side. You can do that. Like, genuinely, that is an option for every young person listening to this or everyone with a teenage son or daughter. That is, you can become a mutual agent if that's what you want. If you spend a few years on the tools, making some good money and getting a backup. But I do appreciate that's where the art comes in. And she's like, yeah, like actually it is better. But I don't necessarily, in terms of the goalposts keep moving away, I don't think people should despair. And unless you live, look, if you live in Sydney or kind of Brisbane now as well, Brisbane doesn't really have the first two rungs of the ladder in so much as the unit supply in Brisbane is so low that affordability, if you're a young Aussie in Brisbane's worse than it is in Sydney. Because you don't necessarily have the same level entry, well, you don't have the same entry level apartments that you would have in Sydney to use it as a store of value, essentially. You have units in the inner city which go for a lot, and then you suddenly into houses which are now like 1.1, 1.2. So there is the first few rungs of the ladder. But to our point where we started the ep, St Kilda East, here's a great place, very high level socioeconomic area in Melbourne. I'm not telling people to buy it. This is just an example of affordability, right? $200,000. It's a studio in St Kilda East. Very...
How much?
200.
Okay.
Very expensive, well, very high socioeconomic area, right? You're 5-10 minutes from Melbourne CBD. This is just an example for 200. So if you go for it is a studio, so I will add in a caveat about lending and everything. But let's say you're good to get lending for it. Let's say you find a lender, a second, third tier lender that is happy and is able to do the 5% deposit scheme. What's that? $10,000. You don't get stamp duty on that either.
Yeah.
You know,
so all in with conveyancing, everything else, you're probably in 15.
Yeah. And let's have a buffer. Let's say 20, 25.
Yeah.
This is something that, and you know, not to belittle people, get a weekend job. That is pour beers on a weekend and you will get that. Even if you're paycheck to paycheck now, you will make up that shortfall within a year or two.
Yeah. It's always, look, you know, and you know, that young lady there, maybe become a bricklayer, right? You know, you get paid, you know, per brick you put down. My view of all of this, and again, we don't talk about this, and our leaders don't talk about this in a mature way, right? It's this come back to this concept of fairness, right? And what we're being told right now about fairness. It's not fair that some people get to be a homeowner and some people not be a homeowner. It's what we're told. We're going to make it fairer for everyone, right? But fairness is about choice, right? And if you're a younger person, and I've said this time and time and time again, but I'll say it again, you can't compare, someone's chapter 8 with your chapter 2, right? Like that might be 20, 30, 40 years more advanced than you. So this notion of fairness, it's unfair that I can't have that now, is a silly concept, right? When you're younger, you can't have everything at the same time, right? You definitely have to choose one thing, right? And if you want to choose doing an undergraduate and then a postgraduate degree over however long that is, and if you are choosing a degree where unfortunately the likelihood of earning a big salary is low, that's okay, but you've got to have a comfortable choice and be comfortable with your decision around that. You might love, what's it, art therapy? I don't even know what that is, but I can only assume. But if that's what you love to do and that's what you want to do, go and do it. Like wholeheartedly go and do it. Enjoy your passion. Make your passion your paycheck, right? Unfortunately, your paycheck's probably going to not be enough to buy a property. So you've got to choose one. If your passion is to be a homeowner, you may need to choose to be a bricklayer because the immediacy of making money is going to be faster. You're going to get scaling over time, and you're always going to have utility, and you're always going to have a job, right? So you may need to do a job that you don't necessarily like, but you go to it every day and you get a paycheck and you can do it. I would argue, I don't know, she didn't mention what her grandparents and parents did, but I reckon they were probably working from 16 years old. We're talking post-war with grandparents there. They're probably working in some sort of blue-collar job somewhere. And yes, housing there as a percentage of income was different. But the choice they probably made was, I'm going to go to work. I'm probably going to do a job I don't particularly like, but I'm going to do it because it's a utility for me to do what I want to do, and that is own a home and raise a family with 3 kids. So when you're younger, you can't choose everything. You've got to choose one. If you want to choose backpacking around the world, go and do it. But don't do it on the basis that you feel as though you're missing out. It's a choice to do it. Go and backpack for 10 years. I did. I didn't do anything in my 20s. The bum, But Jesus Christ, I had a good time. And that's what I wanted to do. Though I wasn't a homeowner then. I didn't choose home ownership. I didn't choose marriage and kids. I chose I'm going to be a vagrant for be a global vagrant for 10 years.
Yeah,
brilliant. And am I happy I did it? Yeah, absolutely. Am I upset that I didn't get on the housing ladder back then in my 20s when housing was considerably cheaper than what it was in my 30s and my 40s? No, but I chose one. Unfortunately, we're sold this narrative that everyone can have everything simultaneously, and that's not the case. So go and pursue your passion in art therapy, and hats off for you for doing it, because no doubt we need art therapists doing something. I don't know what they do, but and I'm not belittling that at all. I just generally don't know what they do. Maybe it's people doing therapy through creative expression, which I imagine has great utility.
I'm sure it's
they
good.
think it's a really good functional.
I'm
just assuming here a functional way for people dealing with mental disorders is therapy through art. People have been doing it for thousands of years. Winston Churchill, that's how he dealt with his black dog. Used to go out and paint pictures, and he was a bricklayer as well. Did you know?
No, I did not know that.
Winston Churchill, he did a bricklaying. He was actually, I think he was the patron of the Bricklayer Society.
Really?
He was a qualified bricklayer.
Yeah, right.
And that's what he used to do at his personal property.
Did not know that.
When he was under pressure and stress, he'd escape to the country and he'd lay bricks, and allegedly he was pretty good at it. So no doubt there's good to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got another. Let's do one more thingamajig. I'm conscious of time, but. What do you got there, John?
You really do need to see this data. What it shows is that our changes to make housing fairer are working. Right now, first home buyers are facing less competition from investors, and importantly, more investors are taking out loans to build new homes than ever before. With a 27% increase in loans for new builds, we're fixing a broken housing system, finally giving first home buyers a fair crack and boosting housing supply. You really...
I'm a bit confused.
It's funny when you see the stats, and lending for first home buyers has gone down like 14% or something. The fewer first home buyers are buying now than they were before. Those are the facts.
I'm just trying to work out what he just said.
It was...
Did he say, so there's less investors in the market, which is good for first home buyers?
I think...
But then he said...
They're all moving into the new builds.
All investors are the 27% increase in loans for new builds.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Labor really expected that there would be such a drop in investor activity. So I think that they're doubling down on cheaper house prices are a good thing, and I'm sure for some it really is. I don't really think that they factored in the second, third, fourth order effects of now needing to cut the federal budget by tens of billions of dollars at a time when productivity is low.
What was that bit of paper he held up?
I don't know, some bill of some kind, maybe.
It was probably the stats he's referencing.
What's a Commonwealth logo on there? Don't know.
So he's just in a 20-second TikTok reel has just summarised a housing market of great complexity that no one's able to understand or get right.
It was that simple. All
And it was
along.
so staccato that it looks like he's spoken for maybe 5 minutes, and then some young social media person's clipped it together to give it as a reel.
Yep.
So it's much better to be a first-time buyer because there's less in the market, and then more investors are buying new build homes.
Yep.
What's the positive of more investors buying new build homes? I didn't really understand.
More supply. There's the rental. There's the rental supply coming on, I guess.
Okay. Anyway, I ain't got a lot to say about that. I don't really get it. It's like quickly say something about it. There's nothing to see here. It's all okay. It's all good.
Yeah. Pretty much. Everything's better than it was 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm told. Is that it? Is there any more reaction videos, Jacob? That's it. All right. Good. Sweet. Okay. Well, we covered a bit there. Cost of living, housing, CPI.
Yeah.
What's the mail on CPI? Is it that they think it's going to be increasing?
What's the what on CPI?
What's the mail? What's the go?
What's the mail?
Yeah. What
Gosh,
are they
might have
telling
that
us?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, things getting bad.
Yeah.
Things getting
So,
bad.
so
Interest rates
CPI's
going
got
up.
so inflation's going to increase. Job data
Well, I
job
think
data
it's because
numbers were great.
the trimmed mean is the same, so it hasn't gone down.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of still very high. And jobless numbers, joblessness has gone up as well.
Yeah. All right.
Bad.
I think we're going
Bad
to
juju.
we're going to be able to watch this play out over consecutive Fridays for the next period. Anyway, so what do you do about it all? I don't know. Just make sure your family budget's in order. Is what I'd be saying.
No $160 fish and chips.
I'd be building in buffers.
Yep.
You think about it. Everyone already was talking about it's impossible to slowing of property markets. Property investors refinancing. Well, you can't refinance a property that's worth a lot less today than what it was when you build it. So there's
No
gonna
equity
be,
stripping
there's going to
there.
be a lot less
Yeah.
activity in the market. What does it all mean? Well, it's going to be a slow market for sure. And we've seen, I think John McGrath on REB was saying, don't expect to see a very bullish spring selling season.
Yep.
It's going to be steady as go. I'm going to be catching up with Tom Panos as well next week because I know you're not going to be around. I need to get some fillers for Property Buzz. So I'm going to try and collar Tom. I mean, him can do one, and no doubt he's been watching his stuff.
No doubt there'll be
recently.
opinions.
There'll be some opinions.
One or two.
Maybe.
One or two
Potential opinions.
Yeah.
So that's Property Buzz. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Liam, thank you. It's good
Thanks,
to see you,
Phil.
buddy. And we've got to get down to the city to host the REB Top 100 agents reception. So it'll be good to chat with them agents down there. And I'd be interested to see. I'll come back next week with reports on what they're telling me. I think you've got the number one performing agent in Australia down there.
We got most of them.
Yeah, he did
Yeah.
over 900 million in sales last period. Be interested to see how that sort of plays out for this year across that whole top 100 agents. But thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.